South Africa's education expenditure is bleeding at least R1 billion per year on so-called ghost teachers, a term for individuals who draw a full teacher's salary but do not work a single day. These ghost teachers include those who have died, resigned, or otherwise exited but continue to draw salaries, as well as those who took a teaching job and never showed up to work once but still draw the salary for many years, and even those who literally do not exist on paper only and still draw a salary that is pocketed by somebody else. The worst part is that this figure of over R1 billion comes from only two provinces' education departments, Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal. The rest, or the other 7 provinces, have not even done any investigation into this yet, meaning that the real number is likely significantly higher. On top of that, any individual can literally buy a teaching job in South Africa today, regardless of any qualifications, because here teaching jobs are sold off like livestock at an auction, and while unqualified and corrupt cronies and criminals are cashing in, millions of South Africa's children are condemned to illiteracy and poverty. The South African education system is rotten. In Mpumalanga alone, the Department of Basic Education already reported that they waste R6.4 million every year, almost $400,000 on teachers who don't even exist. Well, they exist on paper, but not in the classroom. These so-called ghost workers draw fat salaries for doing absolutely nothing, while our children sit crammed into overcrowded classrooms. And KwaZulu-Natal, even worse. There, the Department of Education bleeds an estimated R1 billion a year, $55 million, straight into the pockets of these ghosts. Entire schools of phantom teachers are being paid by you, the taxpayer, while real learners are abandoned. These ghosts aren't just retired, dismissed, or even dead teachers who somehow stay on the payroll. They also include people who never even existed to begin with. Fabricated names with a fake ID number, all siphoning off money meant for South Africa's school children. But the rot doesn't stop there. Out of this corruption has grown a whole new industry, the buying and selling of teaching jobs. That's right, government jobs in education are now traded like cattle at an auction, as Professor Nadine Peterson of the University of Johannesburg pointed out. These taxpayer-funded posts are going for around 25,000 rands, or just under $1,500.
Well, I've heard up to 25,000 rand, but there even seems to be a payment plan, because one student told us about being asked to pay a down payment of 3,000 rand, and then when they get their first salary, being able to pay off. This is very worrying, because it's almost as though the scammers are on a kind of payment plan with the students or the graduates.
Principals, administrators, and crooked middlemen pocket the bribes while buyers cash in on guaranteed government salaries for not doing a single day's work. The scariest part of all of this is that some of these teaching jobs may actually be sold to people who may never even show up for work. In this video, we'll take a look at how rampant corruption has brought the entire education system in South Africa to its knees. South Africa spends more money on education than almost any other country in the world. Yet, we get some of the worst results globally, year after year. The Department of Basic Education eats up the lion's share of the national budget, more than 300 billion rands a year, or almost 20% of all government spending. Think about that. Nearly 1 out of every 5 rands the state collects in taxes is spent on education alone. That's more than what we spend on policing, on healthcare, on the army, even on infrastructure. On paper, it looks like education is the #1 priority of South Africa's government. But here's the ugly truth. For all that money, South Africans are not paying for a world-class education for their children. They are paying for failure. They are paying for these ghost teachers. union fat cats, and a system where billions disappear before a single child even opens a textbook. Because the hard reality is that the South African taxpayer is getting nothing for the billions that our Department of Basic Education is pouring down the drain. International benchmarks like the Progress in International Reading Literacy study show that a staggering 81% of grade 4 pupils, or otherwise 11-year-old pupils in South Africa, cannot read for meaning in any language. These are kids who are 10 or 11 years old and would have already completed 4 years of formal education. In mathematics and science, things look even worse. We are consistently ranking at the very bottom of global tables, beaten not only by developed countries but by poorer African states with far smaller budgets of education. In fact, in recent trends in international mathematics and science study, South Africa ranked the third lowest in the entire world when it came to the overall level of our grade 4 and grade 9 students in STEM fields, behind only Pakistan and the Philippines. Think about the scale of this national humiliation. South Africa spends thousands more per every single individual student than most African countries, yet we get results that belong in the Stone Age. This is not just a failure of the ANC government, it is national suicide. While public schools in nations that are comparable to South Africa's budget, like Scandinavia, which spends roughly the same amount on education that South Africa does, are raising generations of engineers and doctors and innovators, we are producing for the same price young adults who cannot even read a train timetable or solve basic mathematical educations on a calculator. And here's the bitter irony. The ANC government keeps bragging about investing in education while pouring 300 billion rands a year into the department that delivers failure on an industrial scale. The return on that investment is not educated children, it is graduates who are unemployable in a modern economy. The ANC government is locking this country into permanent poverty while the rest of the developed world surges ahead. By the way, if you find our work informative, receive free updates from us by following the steps on the banner underneath me. And here's where the whole picture comes together. The ghost teachers and the rampant corruption inside the Department of Basic Education are not just side issues. They are the very reason that our results are so catastrophically low for this entire country's future. After all, billions have already been stolen by cadres and their cronies for years, so is it any surprise that there is nothing left for textbooks, for building proper classrooms, and no oversight to ensure accountability for teachers who simply don't pitch up to work? Every ghost teacher on the payroll is not just a number on a spreadsheet. It's dozens of children who go to school and find no teacher there and are being robbed of an education. Every 25,000 rands bribe for a teaching post is not just a transaction and a waste of taxpayers' money, it is proof that the ANC has turned our children's future into a business deal. And every billion rand wasted is another generation of South African kids locked into illiteracy and poverty, while the corrupt elite laugh all the way to the bank. In fact, the ghost teachers are the perfect metaphor for ANC governance. Empty, fraudulent, and sucking the life out of this country, giving no benefit back. We now find ourselves in a situation where not only the fake teaching jobs are used to milk hard-working taxpayers, but middlemen are also making profits from selling these jobs to people who may or may not be qualified to do them and who may or may not even ever show up to work for one day. For years, the people of this country have joked about the levels of corruption and incompetence in our government. Yet, we have now reached the point where this is not in any sense a laughing matter anymore. The government is robbing the children of this country of a proper education and condemning them to live a life of suffering and poverty, worse than many other African countries. Is it any wonder then that Afrikaners oppose tyrannical laws such as Bella, which will do nothing but destroy the handful of functioning Afrikaans public schools in this country, which radically, and I mean massively, outperform the rest of the public schools in this country. It is these schools which still manage to maintain first world academic standards in spite of an education system that is falling apart all around them that the ANC is targeting. Not the schools where teachers don't show up at all, where classrooms are empty with no teacher in them, not the schools where millions of black children sit around all day without receiving any lessons from anybody or any education they are entitled to per South Africa's constitution. No, the ANC prefers to target the few Afrikaner-run schools in this country which actually contribute something to our economy and development and to the future of our children. If you like our content, make this channel stronger by becoming a member of the Willem Petzer group. Just follow these steps written down underneath me on the banner. The South African education system is not a disaster waiting to happen. It is a disaster that has already happened. When 8 out of 10 children cannot even read by grade 4, we are not talking about minor setbacks. We are talking about the complete collapse of a nation's future. What good is pouring 300 billion rands into education if the result is a generation that cannot function on the global economy, that cannot read, that cannot do basic math? The truth is, the ANC has stolen not just money from taxpayers, it has stolen the very future of millions of young school children. An illiterate population that cannot build a modern economy, a workforce without maths or science skills cannot become engineers, doctors or entrepreneurs. Instead, they will be trapped in dependency and unemployment and poverty, just like the ANC seems to intend. Every ghost teacher, every stolen billion, every teaching post sold to the highest bidder adds another nail into the coffin of South Africa's future. It ensures that instead of competing with the world, our children will be forever condemned to the margins. We need to wake the world up to what the Department of Education is doing to the children of this country. Because once you know the sobering truth, you cannot unsee it. As we pointed out in a recent video, which you can view right here, the South African government now also discriminates against young people with disabilities from certain demographics. In other words, we're talking about white people. Together we can expose the rot, protect the handful of schools that still work, and fight for the future where our children actually receive education instead of being robbed by the tyrants currently in power. If you haven't yet, please consider becoming a member of the Willem Petzer group. Your support is what helps this channel grow, reaching new heights and change the hearts and minds of people. Just follow the steps written down underneath me. Goodbye and God bless.